This is The Dragon's Roar by Priestess of Groove, narrated by Roxx. Please note that there is a trigger warning for this chapter, and there is a recount of a suicide within this chapter. There will be a brief noise before and after that section, with timestamps posted below. If that is something you are not comfortable with, please skip that section. But still, enjoy this chapter. Thank you. Chapter 3, John 4. "It's John, for now," John said. Sir Jaime still regarded him warily. "I met a wildling once. I challenged him to an arm wrestle. He was big, but with my right arm I pulled him over with ne'er a sweat." John laughed. "It was your left arm, and I remember you losing rather spectacularly to Tormund." Jaime's guarded expression turned into one of relief, and he stepped closer. John was surprised when Jaime wrapped him up in a hug. At first, John thought he might be weeping, but when Jaime pulled back, his eyes were clear and dry. There was no denying that Jaime looked the happiest he had seen him since Brienne died. "It is such a relief to know there's at least one other person who remembers that time. I thought I was so mad after so many years of remembering the long night." John cocked his head in curiosity. "Did you try to tell people of the long night?" "Oh, certainly not. You saw how well the South believed us the last time. You think they'll believe me in the midst of the longest summer on record?" He shook his head. "No, I've been biding my time, as far as I can tell, waiting for you." "Biding? How long have you been back?" Jaime blinked at him in confusion. "I came back on the day of my sister's wedding." "To King Robert?" John hissed. He tried to keep his voice low in case there was anyone nearby, but he came close to shouting at that. Jaime stared at him suspiciously. "How long have you been back?" "Only about 6 months." "That settles it. The gods sent me back that far for a reason," Jaime replied, his expression the very definition of stone. "Have you noticed something funny about my sister's children?" "Tommen's missing." "Anything else?" "They're not yours, are they?" "Do you really think I could sleep with her after what she did in our other life? She is almost single-handedly the reason we lost that war." "We won that war." How long did you live after that wound?" Jaime said with his old, smug, superior smile. "Long enough to see the sunrise. A few minutes after you died." John replied with a grimace. "Just as I thought. You were the last king, and you died without heirs. The Night King accomplished what he wanted. Doesn't matter if he didn't live to see it," Jaime replied. "Otherwise, the gods wouldn't have seen fit to have us relive our lives. I've been forced to guard your father's murderer while he spirals the kingdom into mountains of debt with my father." John blinked at him. "You've been loyal to me all this time, even when I was just a babe." Jaime looked affronted. "After what we've been through, you doubt my loyalty?" "No, I'm sorry. I know that I know that winning your loyalty was hard fought, but once I have it, I can count on it. I'm especially pleased that you're speaking again." Jaime shrugged and nodded, and then John asked, "Why did you stop speaking?" "I had nothing else to say," Jaime replied curtly. "So, you've been back for 6 months. Do you have a plan to take the throne yet?" He shifted so that he was leaning against a tree. Every once in a while, his eyes would sweep the area for any movement that might indicate another's presence. John sighed and shook his head. No, I may not be a bastard, but that's my current reality. I have no power here, and I'm afraid of what my uncle might do if I went to him about this. You would have his support, I'm sure, but I'm still not clear on when the best time would be to spring this. You've had more than 10 years to think on this. Any ideas? Jaime grimaced. Have you not thought about it at all? John pressed. No, I have. There's little else to do when you stand around for days at a time. My plan boiled down to coming up here and accepting you as my squire. Without your memory, you would have been reluctant to the idea, and your uncle would almost certainly object too because of me. But earning a knighthood under a king's guard is perfectly acceptable for a bastard. Then, if my sister killed off Robert like she did last time, I would do what I could to make sure Ned didn't lose his head and secret him and his children away from King's Landing. You'd be considered a traitor to your family. To Lord Tywin and Cersei. Jaime barked out a laugh. I have little regard for what either of them thinks. What about Tyrion? Maybe father will actually make him the heir like he deserves to be. Very well. I don't have any better plans. I certainly wasn't going back to the wall. I'll accept your offer to be your squire, John said, rubbing his chin as he thought. Are your skills back to where they were at the end? Jaime asked. A raven suddenly fled its roost, and Jaime's sword was in his hand in the next instant. John shrank back so that he was in the shadows. His eyes followed Jaime as he crept off as silent as a ghost into the trees, where his black cloak allowed him to disappear. Several minutes passed in which he could hear nothing. After some time, he could hear Jaime making his way back, clearly having made a loop around the area. This was all I could find, Jaime said, with a wry smile, holding Ghost up by the scruff of his neck. His pup tried to wriggle away, but otherwise did not cry. Ghost! John stepped forward and grabbed him. Stay close, boy. Jaime could have accidentally killed you. Not likely. He's easy to spot, besides. He came in dead useful for the war, Jaime replied. Now, about your swordsmanship. How are you doing? I'm not quite back to what I used to be, but I'm already leaps and bounds better than when I went off to the Night's Watch. Good. Only men who show an uncharacteristic amount of talent and promise are ever selected for squireship to a knight to the King's Guard. Podrick Payne being the exception, Jaime said, but he was smiling, and there was a faraway look in his eyes. Pod was an exceptional man, John said, fondness coloring his voice. It saddened him that he didn't know the young man's fate. He prayed it hadn't been too difficult for him in the end. How does it feel to have your sword hand back? You should have seen me when I first came back. Nearly got kicked out of the King's Guard. My instincts were backwards with my right hand, but my left hand wasn't trying either. For about a week I was completely useless. I was the talk of court. My sister was upset. That wasn't the only reason she was upset. My father thought I was disgracing my position, even though he didn't want me in the King's Guard. Mr. Pycelle was at his most useless, I have to say. Tried to say I suffered a stroke in my sleep and forgot how to fight right-handed. Robert very nearly had it with me then, but I persuaded him to let me stay on for another week to see if there was any improvement. And naturally, I trained extra hard, and now I'm back to where I was before I got my hand cut off. Even went ahead and trained with my left as well, just in case. You don't seem too concerned about the prospect of losing your hand again." He shrugged. "I got used to not having it. My mind never really forgot it. I was able to turn my instincts around, and I've actually been praying to the gods to give me back my ability to see sounds. That was dead useful." "You praying?" John had to stifle a laugh. Jaime had been the one to make archaic comments about whether the gods were really listening or not. "There are clearly gods, or we wouldn't be talking right now. I know that they're listening or watching, whichever you prefer." "And how did you discover that?" "I tried to kill myself." John's heart dropped into his stomach and he gaped at Jaime. "Again." Jaime frowned severely at him. "What do you mean again?" "You tried to kill yourself after Brienne died." "Oh, that. No. No, that was unintentional. I was grieving. I couldn't feel the cold. Didn't even realize what happened until I woke up." "That's a small relief to hear." "It was still foolish," John grumbled. "So why did you try to kill yourself?" "I just couldn't take it anymore. It was about a year after Juliana was born. I did what the gods wanted. I didn't sleep with her. I was forced to live and serve people I hated, day in and day out. I stand outside the door when Robert's whoring. I stand outside Cersei's door when she's whoring. She makes a special point to do it when I'm there for rejecting her. I didn't see the point of continuing. The only person I could rely on was Tyrion, and I saw him sparingly." "What about Brienne?" "She was just a little girl training with her sword at that point. She would have gone on to be of a great service to you, never knowing me. I know you would have treated her well." Jaime's eyes turned to the ground, and he fell into silence. John was just ready to prod him further when he continued. "I went to the Godswood. No one ever goes there. There would have been no one to interrupt me. I was carrying a noose, and I headed straight for the weirwood tree. It's not a true weirwood like this one, but it would serve its purpose. I climbed it, tied the rope around the thickest branch I could find, hung it about my neck. I just sat there for a moment, enjoying the quiet, and then I shoved off the branch." His voice seemed to catch in his throat. He was quiet for the longest time, and he said, "Hanging is a painful way to die. My throat was on fire, my head was pounding, lungs burning. I never tried to get down or claw at my neck. I blacked out. Seemed to take forever to get to that point, and I had a dream. I thought it was rather funny to be having dreams, since the last time I died it was like falling asleep. I dreamt of Brienne. Of course I did. I dreamt of the time right after losing my hand. I'd given up on living, and she was the one who encouraged me to keep going, to fight back, get my revenge. This time, though, I said, I don't have anything worth fighting for, and there was a voice. It was deep and dark and full of knowing. It said, of course you do. He awaits you in Winterfell. And next thing I know, I open my eyes and I'm lying at the foot of the weirwood. The rope had been burned, halfway down the length. I left both pieces there and trudged back to the White Tower. I had a terrible headache for 2 weeks, and a big dark ugly bruise and rope burns about my neck. My voice was a horrible croak, and I had to eat soup while my throat healed. Rumor had it that I had a rough time with the whore. I think Cersei spread those. No one asked me about it. I think Sir Barristan Selmy knew. He wore a look of pity every time he saw me until the bruise fully healed. I also never got reprimanded for supposedly laying with a whore, even though kings of God are supposed to be celibate. Now that I think about it, the old knight hadn't been so dreadful to me as he used to be for soiling my cloak by killing the king. So now you know. The gods are watching us, Jaime said, sounding oddly superior for having just related the tale of how he committed suicide. John felt like he was dying on the inside, and he seemed to struggle to find the right words. 7 hells, Jaime. I'm glad you're alive. Me too, Jaime replied with a faint smile. It only took another 4 years of torture, but we finally arrived at the starting point. It's such a relief to know you have your memories. The task doesn't seem so big anymore. But it's just the 2 of us. We'll manage. Jaime glanced up at the sky and then said, The night's almost done. We've been here for too long already. I'll be watching your training. Do me proud. I can't take a squire who doesn't deserve it. He turned away but stopped again and said, Keep your brother from climbing. Just because I won't be in there doesn't mean that someone else won't be. John nodded. Ghost had gotten tired of hearing them talk and curled up at John's feet, burying his nose into his tail. When John bent to pick him up, he cradled him like a baby and held him close to his chest. He held him so out of convenience, but mostly out of comfort. Not for the first time, he took solace in having a loving family, the only exception being Lady Catelyn. What would it be like to live in a place where you hate everyone and have not a single friend? Jaime might have been better off joining the Night's Watch. He wouldn't have had to put up with listening to his sister cuckold her husband, and he would have ultimately been serving a greater purpose. John went to bed, keeping Ghost close. He didn't fall asleep until he could hear the servants stirring at dawn.